Hello, year 12. I hope you're all well and enjoying your second week back at school. I'm sorry I can't be with you again this week, but I will be back next week. So we're going to properly introduce myself and get to know you guys, and then we can just delve in really to the course, which is, I'm guessing, what everyone wants at this stage. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing this week, I'll be sending you a couple of lessons, plus by the end of the week, I'll also send out your driving test task and instructions. So don't worry too much about that because it is fairly straightforward, the task I'm giving you, but it will be based on the lessons this week. So please make sure that you are paying attention really and just getting your notes down. So it's going to be a bit lecture based, these lessons, but if you just bear with me, and of course, it's really important information that you're going to need and jot down for the course overall. I'm going to start by going over the written exam and how it's kind of divided into sections and what you'll be assessed on. Then we're going to be starting text that will be focusing on this term, Woyzeck by Buchner. Okay, and this is a text that we will be starting to watch and read next week. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to have a look at the layout of your written exam, which is on the screen here in front of you. So the first section is live theatre evaluation, where you will be expected to watch a production and write an evaluation on that. You'll get an evaluative question. Of course, at the moment, year 13 can't go and see live theatre productions, so they're able to use digital theatre. Hopefully that changes by next year. Section B is page to stage, and that is when you will be answering questions on a text called Colder Than Here by Laura Wade. And finally, section C, which we will be focusing on at now, is interpreting performance text, and that is the text Woyzeck as well. So of course, that is what we will be focusing on over the next few weeks. So Section C, interpreting a performance text. This is what is required of you. You become the director of a new production concept of Woyzeck, because that is our text. And as a director, you have to apply methodologies of your chosen practitioner to the adaptation of the play. So you need to talk about, well, here's the text. So you get given an extract of the text in this question. You say, right, this is how I would direct it on stage. But you have to use the methodologies, the techniques that the practitioner we will be focusing on would use, and talk about what the intended effect of that would be. Now, your practitioner, you were given some activities to do on your practitioner over the summer. Some of you may have, some of you may have not. Don't panic about this because we will be looking in more detail, looking at this in more detail next lesson. But your practitioner is called Brecht, okay? And this is him here. And it's his methodologies that we will be using when we talk about how we will direct Woyzeck. But what we need to do first of all, of course, guys, is actually focus on the text Woyzeck and actually understand what's happening in it, which we will be doing this week. And what I've got on the next side is just an example of an exam question. You get given two options. One question is normally very general and the other one is normally more specific, looking at specific aspects of how you would direct it, such as acting, sound, lighting, etc. But no matter what you do, you always have to look at your overall production concept and the aims of it. So this is something we're going to have to build pretty much towards the end of this half term, and as you're reading it, thinking about what is my production going to look like on stage. Try to visualize it as we're going through. Have that in the back of your mind. How practical ideas work in performance, and also comparing your performance to the original performance conditions. So the first time it was performed on stage, how is yours going to look different or similar to that, and what is the reasons for it? They're all sort of things that we need to think about. So obviously we need to go we need to go back to the basics here. We need to look at our text first. That is where we need to start with. We need to understand the text. We need to know what's happening. We need to know what key themes, ideas, values are depicted in the text as well. So on this next slide here, I've just got a summary of the play in bullet points. And get these down if you want to. You don't have to take a photograph of it, whatever you need to do. But it's basically, first of all, it is based on a true story. So Vushna was inspired by the real story of a man called Woyzeck, who was a military barber. Okay, so this is essentially a tragedy. So it's not a happy tale. And what happens in this tragedy is we have a protagonist who, we're introduced to suffers mental illness. He hears voices throughout the play, and he's often ridiculed for this. He's a working class, he's from lower class, so he's kind of exploited as well. So we learn throughout it that actually he's exploited by a doctor in the play who is using him as a human guinea pig in an experiment in exchange for money. So he's exploiting the fact he's from the working class in order to use him for his research, and this contributes to his mental illness and his descent into madness. He is also in love with his partner Marie, who he has a child with, and she has an affair throughout this play, which also drives him deeper into insanity, which eventually leads to him killing Marie. So it's quite a dark play, but there's a lot of themes going on here in the play. So what I want you to think about, I want you to pause this clip for a moment and jot down any ideas based on that plot summary. What kind of key issues do you think is going to be highlighted in here? What do you think Vushna might be trying to get across to the audience from this? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a moment if you just want to pause it to get those initial ideas down. Okay, guys. So this next slide, I will have sent you a clip with the email I sent you, and the clip is a YouTube clip of the plot, a summary of the plot of Woyzeck. Now, it's quite funny, it's quite witty, and yes, it's very much straight to the point, but it's as good as anything that's going to kind of introduce you to the characters and the plot and what's happening. So I just want you to watch that, jot down any notes if you want to jot down key characters, anything like that, please get that down. That would be absolutely brilliant. So just pause this again, go back to the email and find that link for me, please. Okay, hopefully you found that very entertaining, but also very helpful in terms of just introducing you to like the bare bones of Woyzeck and kind of what happens in it. What we're going to look at now is the backgrounds of Woyzeck. So please get these notes down if you need to. I'm going to be talking through them as well. It was written between 1836 and 1837, so that's roughly when it was written. But what we do know is that it is unfinished. So Vushna died before he finished the play, which means it's quite a fragmented narrative, and it means that directors, when they perform the text, they can play around with it a little bit. Vushna's purpose, okay, so he was a man he was a very political man, and he had very strong opinions about the way society was structured. He wanted to educate people on the struggles the working class face. He wanted to educate people on how the middle class exploit the working class and how they're kind of trapped in this vicious cycle. And you can kind of see him getting this message across in Woyzeck as well, and that's kind of the point of the play. But you've got to remember, this period of time when plays were performed on stage, your audience was largely middle class who would not necessarily understand the struggles working class faced, middle class who Woyzeck in his play is actually criticizing for exploiting the working class. So kind of I want you to think about how would this play have been received possibly differently then to when it is now? Was it kind of a bold move for Buchner as well? So I just want you to sort of consider that. Now, looking specifically at Bushna and his life, first of all, I've told you there that his purpose is to give voice to the working class. Very, very political man as well. And here is a quote from Bushna that kind of sums up his thoughts on all this. So I just wanted you to give it a read, this quote, and just jot down any of your ideas um, around this as well. You might want to jot it down. It's up to you. Okay, now let's look at his life. Now, he was born in Germany in 1813. He was a son of an army doctor and he studied medicine as well. So he, even though he is the voice of working class people and he's trying to educate people on the struggles that they face, he himself was not necessarily from that kind of background. Okay, I mean his father was an army doctor and he studied medicine, so he had a lot of opportunities in life. But he observed this happening, okay? He was inspired by the uprising in France, and he was really interested in a lot of revolutionary theories as well. When he was at university, both him and his friend created a Society for Human Rights. Um, as well as this, he created a pamphlet which talked about the difference between rich and poor. And it was, it was quite a risk he was taking in producing this pamphlet because it urged peasants to rebel against the system. And of course, that would have been seen very, very dangerous at the time as well. His friend was arrested, and they did try to arrest him, so he fled. And of course, in Strasbourg, this is where he wrote most of his plays. And when you think about this, is when he would have written Woyzeck as well. Think about everything he's gone through in his lifetime and having to flee. He's committing his life to the cause of speaking out for the poor and those who are struggling. So, of course, we're going to get a lot of that in Woyzeck as well. That's what we're going to expect when we read it. And of course, he died in 1837 before he managed to finish the play as well, which is really interesting and quite important there as well when we look at the actual product, the finished product. So what were his key aims? Well, his aims were to put real people on stage, to tell the truth about society, and he wanted social reform. He wanted people to act on this. He wanted to educate them, make them go away, consider this, think about this, specifically when he knew his audience would be middle class, the people who can actually make a difference, who can change this. He's thinking, well, this is the only way. I'm going to use the stage as a sort of political forum in order to get these ideas across and to try and influence change. He was the first Woyzeck, the figure in his play as well, it's important to note, was the first ever working class tragedy. Okay? Normally, in plays, your tragic figures like Macbeth that we've looked at in your English are in an elevated position in society who undergo a fall, of course, in life, a tragic fall. However, here we have a man, Woyzeck, who's a tragic protagonist who is not an elevated position of society. He is working class. Normally, the lower class kind of characters on stage were used as kind of comic relief. They were sort of the comic figure. That's been flipped on its head here. So think about as well how he's kind of revolutionizing theatre and the risks he was taking as well in the way he portrayed his characters in Woyzeck. Okay. What I'm going to have to do, guys, is because these clips are only 15 minutes long, I'm going to have to stop this clip here. This will be part one. I've just got a few more slides to go through, so that'll be on the second video that I'll send to you. Okay. Excellent, guys.